Hello, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about variable naming in the Java language. Let's get started. Variable naming is a very important topic when you're writing code, especially when you're writing code that should be read or updated, consumed, maintained by other people, other software developers. Because writing a good name for the variable so for instance, you could say int x. Let's take this example, int x equals 1, and then I'm gonna print x. So I've written a program that maybe I know what x is. You don't know what x is. You can't read my mind, and x doesn't really say what this one value means. So to be able to write programs that other people can consume, can understand, can update and maintain, you need to use a good variable name. So some of the rules around naming variables in the Java language is actually pretty simple. First rule is you need to know that variable names in the Java language are case sensitive. So if I have a variable called x, and I go and define another one that's called x, with a capital X, equals 2, well then those are obviously different variables as far as the compiler is concerned. So if you print this value, you're going to end up printing 2 rather than 1. So that's a variable, that's a completely separate variable. Same goes for int my var, and then int my var. Now those are completely different variables. So you get the point. They are case sensitive. The second rule would be that variables can start with a letter, a $sign, or an underscore. So I can put an underscore at the beginning, or I can put a $sign, and it could start with a letter. So X is a letter, A is a letter, B is a letter, etc. It cannot start with a number. So if you put a number at the beginning, it will fail, or a symbol, it will fail. You know, so those are the three things that you can use to start your variable name. Variables cannot start with a number. We've already covered that. Variables can include letters, numbers, and the $sign and underscore, but never spaces or any special characters. They're just not allowed. So a number cannot occur at the beginning of the variable name. However, it can be in the middle or the end of the variable name. Same goes for, was it underscore and the $sign? Sorry. So that's a horrific variable name. Let's make it even worse. Yeah, that's horrible. You should never name your variable something like that. But you know what? It's a valid variable name. And if you print that value, you get 1. One more thing, variable names cannot be a reserved name in the Java language, or a reserved keyword. So we're talking about, for instance, int. Int cannot be a variable name, although int can be a variable name, because remember, variable names are case sensitive. So you have the value 3, and that's fine. But if you're trying to use a reserved word like for, like while, it's not gonna work. You're gonna confuse the language. So you shouldn't be doing that. All right, let's talk about conventions here. And conventions really are just a basic set of rules that the Java community has put in place to, like if you receive a piece of code written in Java, and whoever wrote it cares about the conventions, then there are a certain set of assumptions that you can make around how they named their variables. Things to expect and things you should really follow as well, because it makes just everyone's life easy. Like I said, there are many correct variable names that as insofar that the compiler would accept them, but they're just horrible that you shouldn't really use them. So the first thing you want to know is in the Java language, we use what's called camel case, which means that if you want to name a variable that has more, so if you're naming a variable that has one word, it's all lowercase letters. So a variable name like name, So string name. If you don't know what string is, I don't think we've covered it. We've covered it. I'm not sure. We've covered. If we haven't covered string, that's fine. We'll get to it later. But this is a type, like int is a type, and then the variable name is name. And notice it's all lowercase. Now, if you want to say something like, I don't know, course name, it's a string, course, and then the other word, you would start it with a capital letter, so name. So that is the camel case. The first letter, the first word is all lowercase, and then every subsequent word starts with an uppercase. And that's how you can like easily identify, because if it was like that, and then you add another one like course name size, and you make that int, well, that's just ugly to see. But if you capitalize the first letter of every subsequent word, then you can really clearly see course name size. Size as in the number of letters in the course name. Never mind, let's just keep it course name and put string back. There is no limit really on the length of the variable name. So what I mean by that is, let's say we want to just keep repeating. I mean, that would be a nice experiment. I've read somewhere that there's no limit, but let's just do a ridiculous test. Yeah, there's probably no limit on the size, but look at it, it's ridiculous. That's a valid variable name. And you could say math is the course name. And if you print that monstrosity of a variable name, you'll get math. So obviously, if you see something like this in a piece of code you're reviewing, I mean, just quit that place where you're working. But you get the point. So you really need to strike a balance between being descriptive, but also being precise and to the point. You know, this is really ugly. What was it? Course name. Course name is, you know, concise, descriptive, and to the point. All right, so sometimes you want to define a constant, and that's usually a constant in the language it's just like a variable, but once you assign the value to it at the beginning, you can't really change it, which is like why it's called constant. So for a variable, you can update the value at any point. And then, you know, if you print, you'll get the updated value, which is 9, right? But whereas if you define a constant, and we'll get to constants later, but just know, well, I mean, all you need to do is to just say final end x, and it's a horrible name, but just to show you the difference. And if you, let's get rid of everything here. I mean, let's just talk about constants, okay? Who cares? X, and then you print that, that's a constant. If you're trying to change that constant and give it another value, then you're gonna get the linter complaining, or whatever that is, the checker. And then if you're trying to run it, you'll get cannot assign a value to a final variable. So that's a final. It means that the value that you assign to it is just the final value that it's going to hold in that memory location. So the rules around naming finals are, or naming constants are, that you use uppercase, and in between words you use underscores. So let's say that you're defining something like the max height of a person that is allowed to, whatever, it doesn't matter. And the max height is 100, like 200. Yeah, if you're above 2 meters, then you shouldn't do whatever we're testing against. And so if you print that max height, you're gonna get 200. So max allowed height. is 200. So that is a good variable name or constant name. Why? Because when you see it, the convention here suggests to me that this is a value that is not meant to change. It's a limit of some sort or a constant value that is going to be constant throughout the execution of the program, or at least throughout the instantiation of that value or given it a memory location, to be precise. One thing I want to talk about as well is when you have acronyms and the name of the variable. So like, for instance, okay, this is quite advanced for a beginner, but just say string URL or get HTTP. I couldn't think of any better example, sorry. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and get would be the verb, one of the verbs for the HTTP protocol, and URL would be Uniform Resource Locator. But what these are, they're acronyms, and the way you would represent them according to the Java convention would be to start with an uppercase. Or like usually if you see a document, it would look something like this. Like if you're reading some sort of documentation, HTTP or URL would be all, upper letter because it's an acronym. But if you're incorporating an acronym in a variable name, then you just take the first letter, you leave it uppercase, and then you make everything else lowercase until you hit the next word. Does that make sense? And then, whatever, example.com. So that is pretty much it. Yeah, I do want to talk about booleans as well. So the booleans, we're gonna use X for now. It could be false, boolean, Y. So it could be false, it could be true, the two values. So let's say that you want to track some sort of progress, like a download progress bar, and when it's completed, then you want to say the download is complete. So how would you name a variable that would indicate if the download of a file was complete or incomplete? You could say is, so boolean is, which means is usually used with booleans, because boolean is whether is it true or is it false. It's like a either or, it's a question. Okay, so the question is the value true? So is download complete? What there's no question mark at the end, but what you're saying is the download of whatever this file that the program is downloading, is it complete? And then if the value is true, then it's complete. If the value is false, then it's not complete. So that's pretty much it, right? So yeah, just like in general, I'm looking at my notes here. I'm just gonna say variable naming is all about readability and making sure that the other person, imagine if the other person reading your code is a psychopath and he knows where you live. So if you give them a lot of trouble trying to decipher your program, then they're gonna come and do horrible things to you. So you always make that assumption. So, and it's a joke, but just be kind to the person who reads your program, and that person could be you in a year or a couple of years. So if you haven't used good variable names and you're trying to read some old code that you've written, you're gonna be in trouble. So just be kind to your future self and any other person who would read your code. Just stick to the conventions, because like everybody uses those conventions. They're good conventions in my opinion. And thank you for watching. I hope this helped, and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.